What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to the Cutlass Project build series, where I take this Cutlass cruiser wagon that I found in this dude's backyard that's been collecting dust for a couple years and start resurrecting this thing. I'm building this car to be my next power tour car. I'm a big fan of wagons, and these cars are super nostalgic to me, so I really wanted to try and build one of these things. I'm all about the unique cars, and this one is definitely going to be one of them. In the last few videos, you guys saw me tear this car apart. I built engine mounts for the 3000 and the F23 5-speed manual, built the exhaust for the turbo to make that thing fit in this car, then built an intake to actually get this thing placed where I wanted it to be. In this video, we're going to be diving into the intercooler charge pipe plumbing and all the little small things with the plumbing things that you just don't really hear about. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and dive into this project. Alright, so some parts arrived. I'm trying to figure out some of the stuff for plumbing. I think I've got something figured out for the radiator hoses. So I think the upper hose is going to use this one here. It's a Gates 21430. I think this is for a 3.3 car, so like a 3.3 A body. And this isn't going to fit exactly the way it should here. It's going to need some modification to make this work, mostly because of, well, I think the thermostat housing on the 3.3 comes up or something. I'm not really sure. This could be a lower, to be honest. I'm not sure either, but I think this is an upper hose. It's going to work for an upper. So in case you didn't know, the outlet is like a 1 1/4 inch or 1 5/16 on the 3000. For the A body cars, the radiator is inlet outlet 1 1/4 inch, at least for this year. And this radiator, I think the other ones might have been different, like for a late 80s one. But I think this is the thickest core that I could find for these things. The inlet on the 3000 is going to be a 1 1/2 inch inlet, so you kind of have to get the right hose here. So this is from a W body. So we have 1 1/4 or 1 5/16 here, 1 1/2 here on this side. And I'll have to trim this thing to make this fit because it is pretty tight. It's going to have to fit between the AC compressor and the radiator. And I think what I can do is just trim this thing off a little bit, and then it should still be able to meet that housing there once you get this thing down that section. So I think this is going to work just fine for that. And then this one, what I'll do here on this is I'll probably trim off this right after that straight section. So basically, or right before that curve. So that way it keeps it straight there. So that should be pretty close. And then this side I'll trim off maybe just a little bit. Otherwise, it fits pretty good. And like it has this little notch here, so it's almost like it knew I was going to put a turbo right here. It's not quite perfect, but it's pretty good. I'll just have to make sure this thing can go in deep enough. So I've got a solution for that at least. So we'll sort some of that stuff out later. All right, so I'm working out some of the charge pipes now, just trying to figure out how this is all going to fit here and what I can fit where. So it's been a bit of a challenge because you have this 4-inch intake here, and I'm trying to make sure I fit a blow-off valve in here somewhere. And I think it's going to go right in here. I do kind of want to show it off, so it's going to have to be in this section. From there, I got to figure out how I'm going to get this into the 3-inch pipe here, so I have a couple couplers. Originally, the thought was I was hoping to find a 4-inch to 3-inch coupler for this section right here that also has the right angle on it, but I couldn't quite find something. This is the correct angle. It's a 60-degree bend that I need for this, but it doesn't quite clear things properly. It would basically hit the coil bracket that goes to the valve cover, so I couldn't quite run that. I think that this is going to be, this is going to work. This is going to fit nicely, but it's going to look kind of ridiculous. You know, it's a huge charge pipe, but I'm okay with that for right now at least. So hopefully people don't give me too much crap for that. But otherwise though, I think that that's going to work out. So it's going to go 4-inch to 4-inch coupler here to the 4-inch charge pipe to a 4-inch bend. And then here I'll have a reducer. I think I need to get another 4-inch tube for this of aluminum to make this actually go into that. I thought I might have had one, but I guess not. And then from there, I also have these charge pipes too. These are like a flexible charge pipe, so that way when your engine moves, it doesn't move the intercooler with it or try to move the intercooler with it and break something. So this will give it some flexibility, so it won't need to do that. So I've got that for both sides, and then that'll just come in here inside of this little hole. And hopefully I don't have to make that too much bigger, but I think that might be okay on this side. This side's a lot tighter though. You can see I have my 2 1/2 inch to 3-inch pipe right here. This was supposed to be a 30-degree pipe here, but nobody makes that in the 2 1/2 inch to 3-inch conversion. and it's so tight that it had to do that conversion right there on that charge pipe. So I ended up finding a 45-degree charge pipe bend, and that seems like that's going to work out okay, even though it's going to be a little bit less than ideal. So I think that this side is going to be the most problematic through this core support. I might have to cut this a little bit through here or something just to make sure that that fits, and then I think I'm going to be able to fit my 3-inch flex pipe in here too. It's going to be tight, but I think it's going to work. This whole section is going to be hidden behind the headlight section, so you will never see this in the car, so I'm okay with these being black and the rest of them being blue. Just trying to keep that blue and silver theme going just because, once again, I can and I'm a big fan of it. Alright, so I went ahead and clearanced the core support for the intercooler charge pipes. I made the holes a little bit bigger than they were from the factory. They were more like this one here, but I had to make them a little bit larger towards the bottom. And I think that's going to fit a lot better. Hopefully I don't have to go off too much more on this, but I think that that's going to be okay. Went ahead, just threw some black spray paint in them for now, just to keep that cut line from rusting. No one's going to see this ever, so it's not a big deal that it's not the same color as the car. How many times are people going to look down here and say, oh, yeah, I see some black there, dude. What'd you do? Not concerned about it, so it's functional. You know, it's definitely not good looking, but it's going to work. I'll probably have to trim off this charge pipe a little bit, but otherwise I think I can fit everything in here. So this goes from a 2.5 inch to a 3-inch right here. And then from the 3-inch, it'll be this flexible coupler. It's going to go in there somewhere like that. And then the 90-degree elbow will come out of here and go straight into that. So because of that, I had to get some 3-inch pipes to actually make this, you know, fit these silicone couplers together. So went ahead and just made a bunch of these. These are all just stainless steel pipes that hopefully aren't too hot. They're cooled off now. Basically what I did was I just cut some pipes, cleaned it up, you know, deburred it, and then threw a bead of weld on each of these. So that way it's kind of like a little bead roll on it. And that'll keep these things from actually blowing out underneath like 20 PSI. So that should be okay. And maybe I'll just file these things up again, clear them up, because obviously I didn't back purge them. So, you know, you kind of get what you get with that. So that's all coming along. And we're one step closer here. So once that other charge pipe comes in, I'll just bolt all these up and get that sorted out. All right, so some more parts have come in, and I'm still waiting for some other things, but I think I've got this intercooler plumbing sorted out. So basically what I'm going to do is place the blow-off valve right here and place my little coupler right here. This gets this thing a little bit further away from the coil bracket for this bend, and then places this over here. It is still too tall to clear the hood here. I can't make this go vertical. I can't rotate it this way either and have it hitting the coil or hitting this coolant port. So it's probably going to have to go right there. I still need to throw out the reservoirs for the washer fluid and for the coolant reservoir, but I'm hoping that this isn't in the way too much. I went and got a very small coolant reservoir for this car. I bought the factory ones, you know, both styles from like the 94 car and like the 91 car. This one would have, or 92. None of them quite fit the way I want them to. The factory reservoir would have been right over there. The other one would have been right here, but since I have this throttle here, I can't quite fit that there, so I went ahead and just got a very cheap one off of Amazon for like 30 bucks or so. I'm telling you guys, this project is nickel and diming me so hard that I'm trying to be cheap here where I can. So this is the coolant reservoir I bought for it. I'll probably paint over the words evil energy. I don't know, man. But so I think that this is going to go right here, probably. That's my guess. And then the washer fluid will go right here, maybe. I did relocate the vapor canister, the charcoal canister, to right here. So that's sitting out here. Now, if I get in an accident, it is going to get damaged. And that's just what's going to happen. But it keeps this area clear, though, and clean. Hoping to keep this thing looking somewhat as clean as possible. There's not going to be any fuse boxes or relays. So pretty much what you see now is what this is going to be, aside from all my trash I've got sitting out here. So that's... All right, so I'm working on the throttle cables right now, or at least I'm going to start in that. And you can see this is the throttle bracket right here. So I am using a North Star throttle body on this car, which is a little bit larger than a 3800 throttle body. It's actually the same size as an LS1, and it just happened to be what I had on hand when I did this project. Being that I made my own intake manifold, I could have gotten any throttle body I wanted to, but since I already had this one and it's already a common swap for 3800s, I figured I might as well run it. It is basically an LS1 throttle body. It's the same diameter, so it's going to flow a lot of air. So to use the North Star throttle body, you can't quite just throw this on here if you're using a 3800 throttle cable. Which, by the way, if you're doing an engine swap where you're putting the throttle cable somewhere way out here or really far away from where your pedal is going to be, grab a W body throttle cable. They are amazingly long. This is the one I'm using for this car, or at least I'll plan to use on it. And it is quite the unit. This is like 4 or 5 feet long. So that should give me plenty of space to put this pretty much anywhere I need to, hopefully. It is very far away, so we'll be testing that theory. I'm also going to be running the W-body cruise module as well. These things work great when they work. They're kind of hit or miss if you can get these things to work in an engine swap. And there's a bunch of different codes of these. This is the one I've had luck with so far. So I'm going to see if this one works in this car. And so I'll have to figure out where we're going to mount this thing now. And I'm thinking that this is going to go probably somewhere down here. I think there's some space down there for it that I'll try and squeeze it into. I'm probably going to end up zip tying the whole thing, to be honest. Mostly just because I don't want to climb under the car and get all up in there. So I think that I'm just going to zip tie it somewhere to the frame or something, unless there's like an easy access bolt I can get to and it fits nicely. So that's a cruise module. It's going to go down there somewhere and then somehow route that cable up here and through this hole and then onto the throttle body. And hopefully if this all works out, this car will have a working cruise control, which will be very nice for like road trips, power tour. Can you imagine a power tour car with working cruise control and air conditioning? I can't. That sounds too nice for power tour. So let's see if we can make that happen. All right, so for those of you who are using the North Star throttle body on a stock 3800 style throttle cable, you'll know that you have to kind of drill out this little hole where the the cable itself holds itself inside of the throttle body. Otherwise, it doesn't quite fit. This wasn't really made for this. There's a different style for the North Stars, but this works if you drill it out to a 1/4 inch inside of that section right there. So that worked out pretty well. Also had to trim the cruise cable too as well, and actually had to trim out both of these inside of the bracket so that way these things would actually fit there, because these holes are circular at the end of it and these are square style cables. So had to go ahead and use a die grinder in that, and that seemed to work out all right. One issue I'm seeing too is that the 3800 throttle body cable is it's angled in the wrong direction for the retainer clip, so it's trying to go out of it. So there's not much use of that retainer clip once you get in here, because it basically wants to immediately come out and doesn't want to go in. As you can see, I'm struggling with it. We can fix that though. Zip ties are the answer to every problem. So I'll just zip tie this thing on here and it won't go anywhere, and I will always have a throttle cable. This will be our little secret, but I had to modify the pedal assembly a little bit because the angles just weren't right here. So I basically had to get this thing to bottom out on that little bracket right there, because I wasn't doing it before because this cable is so small in the firewall. So then I also had to modify the pedal on the bottom side too to get the angle back corrected, just because I had to modify that top angle so much. I think the proper way to do this would be to get a newer throttle assembly, a new pedal bracket. I think like the 3.3 cars might have a newer style. I'm not sure. Otherwise, these things seem like they're probably pretty universal. You could probably get one from like a W body and just get the whole shebang there that way. But so I'm going to bolt this on and get this thing knocked off my list, one step closer to being done.
And rapid strap down our chunk, and what else? Fluids, gas again.
Full action, man. That's working. I'm gonna need to bolt this down a little bit more, but I have pedals. All right, so the throttle cable is installed. I'm not thrilled about the placement for it yet, but I've thought about kind of maybe putting it in here or something. I'm not sure yet where it's gonna sit, but so it'll have to sit right here or back there. I'm not really sure, but I'm pretty limited in options there with that. The good news is that the throttle pedal assembly that I modified is working pretty good, it looks like, so I think I'm going to be all set. The issue I had before, and the reason why I had to modify it, was because when it was at fully open, fully closed throttle, like nothing touching the pedal at all, this thing was open about this far, and that's officially not good. You don't want throttle when you're not commanding it. So now, at least with that modification, it stops on its own. You can't push it any further, so that is golden, or at least as golden as it's going to get. So I was hoping for more of a bolt-on solution, but this worked out okay. I think I'm not going to have any sort of mishaps with that, hopefully. So I got that sorted out. I still need to zip tie this thing somewhere, but I think the cruise control module is going to sit right here. This seems to be a pretty good spot for it, and I don't think you're going to see too much of it unless you're really looking for it in the front end. So that was a good call. I thought about putting it over here, but didn't want to drill a hole in the front bumper, so I didn't go ahead and do that. So I think I'll just zip tie it here so it doesn't rattle and shake, and then we'll call that good. aside from all that, I'll get this stuff done and we'll get, yeah, cool. So for the throttle cable, I actually ended up flipping this thing over and putting the tab on top instead of the bottom. This keeps it in the right direction for this, and also helps line this thing up properly too, because if I had it flipped over, it puts the cable a little bit over to the right, and that causes this thing to bind up a little bit, or at least make some noise, which was kind of annoying. I'll probably slide it over just a little bit with a zip tie, and that'll be fine. All right, so the plumbing never ends in this thing. So I've got my boost control mechanism here, which consists of 2 MAC valves, and then also I have this bracket I just built for this thing. I went and I threaded these little holes in here. I'm not sure if you're supposed to do that, but I think that's going to work out. It barely grabs it, so it's probably not enough material for it. So I might have to go back in and thread it with like an M5 maybe. But M4 was just enough to actually get some thread in there. So I think what the plan's going to be is it's going to go on here like this. It'll thread on from the back. So this will be on the car right there like that. So the way this is going to work is that, so you have your turbocharged pressure coming inside of here. This will go out to the top of the wastegate, and I'll have a dome pressure sensor there to see how much pressure is inside of that. So this will control the top side of the wastegate from here, and then I'll have another T off of this side to go into the bottom of the wastegate. So I still need to get some T's here. I've been trying to use some more of these push to connect fittings, and then I've seen people use them on the wastegates themselves, but I don't know how you get like a banjo fitting here for those push to connects. So I'll probably just run these things still the same way they did from Precision. So if you guys know about how people are doing that, that'd be cool. I'm not really sure what they're doing to make that work, but I haven't found anything online that works for that just from the get-go. So that'd be cool to just do like the push to connect 1/4 inch fittings. That would make things so much easier. So for now though, I'm just going to keep running these things the way they are right now, like this. And then I'll have like a T off of here for the dome pressure sensor, T on this side, and this thing should be dialed. So I'll go ahead and thread these things on and get this thing on the car. All right, so I've got all the wastegate plumbing sorted out here for now. Eventually, if I can find some quick connect banjo fittings, I'll switch these over, but otherwise this is going to be okay for now. I went ahead and just hid this thing in this fender. I had it up here on the strut tower, but it was just so exposed. It looks so janky. I decided to just hide the thing inside of here. So you can still see the plumbing to it, but it's not just a huge mess of wiring and plumbing now anymore. It's all kind of hidden down there. So that's all sorted out there. Plumbing for that's done. So what we've got going on here is we have charge air pressure coming out of this tube. I have a little fitting here because there isn't one in the turbo. It is a cheap turbo. It is what it is. And we're improvising. We could drill and tap it, but we're already here. So this goes to a T. One of the lines goes to the bottom of the wastegate, which activates the bottom of it. So when there's a certain amount of pressure in it, it'll open up here. The other side of the wastegate goes to these MAC valves, which control how much pressure goes in the top of the wastegate. So it'll hit a certain amount of pressure, and it'll read it off of this gauge down here. And once it has the right amount of pressure, that pressure is going to push back down on the top of the spring. So that's going to give you your boost control. So you can have, say, 8 psi on the bottom, then 8 psi on top. The spring's not moving because there's equal pressure on both sides of it. So in theory, you could have as much pressure being put out of the wastegate as possible, and that's kind of how that's going to work. So it's a little bit better looking than I did in the Grand Prix, so definitely had some lessons learned. I used as many quick connects as possible. Came out with a fairly decent result, aside from just, this mess of fittings right there. So that's all sorted out. Also got some of the other plumbing sorted out too for the vacuum canister, so that's all connected down there. So we got lines going from the fuel tank to it, and also to the intake manifold. Actually, it's not quite there yet, but ran out of fittings here. What I need is a 1/4 inch one-way valve, kind of like what I have back here. This is a one-way valve, and that'll go into this vacuum block there for everything. This thing will be pressurized under boost, so you don't want to have that pressure going into your HVAC systems, unless you want to have that situation where when you go into boost, it changes where the HVAC is set to. So if you have it like on defrost and you go into boost, it'll put it down to 4, which is hilarious. But if you don't want that, you kind of want to have a one-way valve here, and then this will keep your HVAC happy. It'll keep vacuum inside of your vacuum reservoir too. So I'll need to do the same thing on the fuel tank side too, because we don't want to be pressurizing the fuel tank or the charcoal canister and just blowing all that stuff out. So the coolant overflow tank is in here too as well. It's just kind of, it's not the best mounting mechanism here quite yet, but I'll probably zip tie it or something to kind of keep it somewhat set in here. It's got some rib nuts and bolts holding it on for now, but it's not going anywhere. It's just, it moves a little bit, which is not ideal, but that is plumbed here. These fittings are a little bit larger than they said they were, so it is what it is. I don't think they're going to come loose at all, though, so they're pretty tight. Also, the washer fluid nozzle here, too, so got a nice little tank there. Kind of hidden, but not really. It's kind of small, but it's here, so that's what counts. So most of the plumbing is basically done here. I do have some small things here and there to sort out, but otherwise, the plumbing is basically done. We're ready to wire the car now and put the interior back together. So I think that's going to do it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.